And good afternoon. This is Justice for All. I'm George Yates, and we're here for our second hour. And this is a great opportunity here. We're speaking with Dr. Leyla Ali. She's a doctor of pharmacy. She's the author of Off Balance, The American Way of Health. And we'd like to welcome Dr. Leyla Ali to the show. Dr.
Hi,
Ali?
thank you so much. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, hi, thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Okay, great. Listen, I've got your book and I've read it, and it's I'm fascinated by it. And tell me, you're a doctor of pharmacy. How did you get involved in what got you into the idea of writing this book, and what's it about?
Well, the book I wrote the book after. Well, I've been in pharmacy for a pharmacist for 16 years, and working in pharmacies for over 25 years. And in that time, I've seen what drugs actually do to people. And you see when people get on more and more drugs, they're not getting healthier and healthier. They're getting sicker and sicker. So they never really get well. And then when I started learning about alternative and holistic health, I realized that there's so many other things that people can do that they don't know about. There's so many, like people are actually on meds for years on things that could be easily treated with holistic health, but nobody has any idea. So that was the purpose of the book, is to let people know that there's other ways to treat themselves besides the doctors and the drugs.
And you come to this from a perspective of being a trained professional.
Right, yeah. They didn't teach this in pharmacy school, that's for sure. But it's when I got out of pharmacy school and I started looking around. And there's a lot of people that already know that, but most pharmacists, I think, stay on. I mean, some of them do, but most of them stay on their track where they don't understand this. They don't really have time to look into this. They learn their profession, and that's what they know. So it's, but there's a lot that go more into natural and things like that.
And your father's a doctor?
Yeah, my father passed, but he was a doctor for a long time. And
so what are your peers? What are your book is Off Balance, The American Way of Health, a pharmacist's perspective on why drugs don't work. So right there on the cover of the book, you're basically parting company with your colleagues in the pharmacy business, as well as your. What do your peers think about this? Your pharmacy friends?
I call it. Some of them understand, and others you kind of get. I call it the blank stare, where they don't really comprehend. I mean, it's kind of like a different language kind of to them, because they just really weren't trained in any of this things that I talk about. They don't know about holistic health. We get trained to tell people to take your drugs as prescribed. Don't stop taking them without your doctor. So it's kind of a different language than what they're used to. And you really have to kind of go off track to learn about this stuff if you're a pharmacist.
Well, but don't drugs save lives too? At what point do you decide that someone should not take a drug? I'm a little confused by it, because certainly if somebody's got, let's say, high blood pressure, you're not going to suggest to them that they don't take their high blood pressure drugs, or do you?
No, I don't. If you have high blood pressure, it's important it's controlled, because it can be dangerous. But I would tell them that there's a lot of different ways to deal with high blood pressure. And acupuncture with herbs is much safer than a lot of drugs. There's some theories that there's emotions behind every health condition or disease. So there's a lot of different things besides the drugs. And there's something that's off balance, that the drugs will never get into balance. They'll just help you with the symptom. So It's important to look at the different angles.
So let's say we take a person that's got high cholesterol. Should they take Lipitor or not take Lipitor?
Well, what they should do is, if that's all they want to do, they can take Lipitor, but it's a dangerous drug. There's side effects. But if you want to actually help the cholesterol, there's diet. Acupuncture is also great for that. And exercise. There's a lot of different ways to get the cholesterol down besides the dangerous statins. So there's a big picture that, body, mind, spirit should all be addressed. And when you just take the tablets, when you just take your pills, you're just kind of holding people in place, like I have it in the book. the balance scales. You're just making people more comfortable.
Right. I had a Halloween party last night, and the fellow that was helping me behind the bar, daughter is just studying to be an OD, or is it a DO, as opposed to an MD. And they seem to have a more holistic approach to medicine, I suppose, than the MDs. Is that, you talk in your book how when you go see a doctor, the first thing the doctor does is says, here, take this pill, and take this this medication, and follow exactly the instructions. And you're saying it's more complicated than that.
Right, but the pharmaceutical companies have trained everybody so much that people go in, they want a drug. They got commercials saying to get a drug. Insurance pays for the drug, and that's what the doctor is taught to give a drug. So it's just a really huge business system that's gone completely out of control.
Well, it appears that way to me, too. I mean, you take a drug like, let's say, a Xanax. It's supposed to, just calm people down. And you go, well, isn't there a better way than just giving somebody a pill to go calm them down? Shouldn't they just change their lifestyle a little bit, right? But no, it's just go take this drug, as opposed to, why don't you go take a vacation or go see... Go ahead. Breathing
techniques, meditation, and also those drugs are really addictive, and so sometimes they take more when they're anxious, and then they come in when they run out, and they get more anxious. I mean, it's a terrible cycle with those, and they're really hard to taper off of. Some of them, I know people that are having a really hard time getting off that class of drugs with tons of side effects.
And the Adderall, my Lord, your kid isn't performing as well in school, so you go get them, and the first thing they do is they give them one of these drugs, which basically speed them up, and the next thing you know, the kid's addicted to. Now you're getting people hooked on drugs younger and younger and younger.
Yeah, and when I was asking, recently I was looking at the top 10 drugs and what are good alternatives, and I was talking to an Ayurvedic practitioner, which studies the Indian medicine. And he was saying, that the people here were overstimulated and were sort of confined. And if you put a kid in nature and let him run around, there's no ADD. So it's kind of there's no, in the suburbia, there's, a lot of ADD because people are, the cell phones and everything else. But when they're out running around, you don't hear of that problem.
I mean, you give this kid an Adderall, or you give him one of these other speedy drugs, and then they have to give him another little drug to put them to sleep at night. So now you've got them actually on two drugs just so that they can survive. And they might only be 13, 14 years old. Yeah.
That's another terrible trend coming along.
Something else that I've had a chance to, because I've researched this a little bit myself, Dr. Ali, and I agree with so much of what you say about drugs and the way that they're overprescribed. And isn't there you mentioned about the FDA and how the FDA is just not on the consumer's side. Tell us about that. It's in your book. It's quite an indictment of the whole pharmaceutical industry as well as the government watchdog, the FDA.
Yeah, you can't trust them. I'm obviously not the first one to write about that, but they're supposed to make sure that the drugs are safe. But I don't know if you got to read the interview in Chapter 13, but this is a guy who was 30 years old and took antibiotic and is now disabled. And that's Cipro, and that class of drugs, Cipro and Levaquin, those are prescribed all the time for simple things, and they're disabling people, and they're more and more. And the drug companies will keep selling them until there's enough people that get damaged by them that they can't anymore. And there's a lot of drugs like that they'll just push them on the market until enough people are damaged and there's enough hype that they'll pull them off.
And it's really just a cost of doing business. They'll make billions of dollars selling the drug, and then if some lawyer runs an 800 number and sues them, and they'll settle the cases. But in the end, the pharmacy company made money selling the drug, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the trends you see when they do get in trouble. They'll make $5 billion off the drugs and then have to pay maybe $200 million on fees.
Right.
So it's like a slap on the wrist.
And you've got a long list of drugs on there. The ones that come to mind are, of course, the Vioxx, which was originally marketed as some sort of an arthritis drug, right? But then it ended up causing heart attacks.
Right, yeah, and there's still one, Celebrex is still related to that.
Yes.
And that's still on the market. But that's supposed to be like an ibuprofen, sort of an anti-inflammatory, without the side effects of the ulcers that those cause. But then it caused a lot of people to have heart attacks and die, so.
And then you've got the fen. That's a diet drug, right?
Yeah, that was big in the 90s. That was a combination of two drugs, phentermine and fenfluramine. And one was like speed, and the other is kind of a downer, and they both help lose weight. So it seemed like a really great solution. But as time goes on, more and more people showed up, and they had, heart valve problems where they couldn't, they would die from that. I mean, their heart would stop functioning. So, and that was big in the 90s. That was huge. So one of those is pulled off the market. The phentermine, which is just another form of amphetamine, is still on the market.
So you were a pharmacist and actually practicing, working in the retail pharmacy. And this is that your book is really a promotion of holistic. What are your favorite holistic, let's say, remedies, for want of a better word, holistic techniques? What works? You mentioned acupuncture. What do people do instead of drugs to cure their problems?
Acupuncture is really a great start, and it's where I go when I have all kinds of issues, any kind of pain. I've gone there for ear infections, and just, if you go to a doctor with non-specific symptoms, this is off or this is off, a lot of times people go and they say, well, there's nothing wrong with you, and you're like, well, I feel terrible. What do you mean? And that actually happened to the interviewee, Chapter 5, Storm Cole, where she knew she felt terrible, and then the doctor said that, he kind of made a joke and said, I have chronic fatigue too, haha, and then she went to a naturopath and she learned how to cleanse. So naturopaths are great. Acupuncture is where I go myself when I have any issue. The guy in Chapter 4, actually, he was a pharmacist and left pharmacy to go into acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. Ayurvedic medicine is also another one. So, but that's what I think. Ayurvedic medicine is the Indian, like the acupuncture is the Chinese medicine that's been around for thousands of years, and they do herbs and they do the acupuncture. And Ayurvedic is the old Indian form of medicine, and it's the same. It's similar to acupuncture in that they use herbs, but they classify the people in three types, and they give you diets, and they kind of help you with slow changes. They have yoga as well. So that's something for slow change and getting back in balance. So both of those work on getting the person back in balance over the long term.
Well, now acupuncture is needles, right?
Yeah, that's right. You lay down and they put needles. It's a meridian system, and everything in acupuncture is energy flow. So if you have stagnant energy, any kind of pain or problem is something is off balance with the energy and the energy flow. To make it simple, but it's a little more complex than that. But
does it hurt when don't they stick you with needles? I mean, I think people would rather take pills, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think they would. But there's,
Is it painful when you get poked with the needle in acupuncture?
They put you with the needle in, and then you lay there for 45 minutes, say, and just relax. So, but yeah, it doesn't feel great, but the results are amazing. I mean, I've, even for colds and stuff, I've gone in and felt great the next day because they got the circulation going. What
is the science behind acupuncture? How do they know where you're going in with an ear infection or ear ache? You're saying it cures an earache.
Yeah. I went for an earache. He said everything's energy flow, and he said, "Is your neck stiff?" And I'm like, "Oh, I never noticed. It is stiff." But it's all about the energy and the different points in the body. And if you only know Western medicine, you'll never understand it. But if you think about reflexology in the feet, if someone pushes in one part of the foot, then it affects the heart. I mean, everything's connected. So it's sort of like working on that same system. And I've actually been to an acupressure person, and they were same thing with the ear. Every single little point on the ear affects one of the organs, and same with the teeth. So everything's connected. So it's working on this system, a meridian system is what they call it. Not being an expert, I don't want to try and say too much, but it's just regaining balance on the whole body.
So if somebody goes in and does insurance pay for acupuncture?
They are a little bit now, more and more. but that is another huge problem. Is these holistic remedies aren't covered. The drugs are, but the drugs aren't covered because they're more effective. It's all because it's part of the business system. So people don't understand, and the drug companies. I mean, the drug companies' insurance are, they work together tight too. But if the insurance companies understood the holistic health, they could save a lot of money.
Because people would just be healthier to begin with, and they wouldn't. They would seek out these alternative forms of medicine before they needed the drugs.
Right. I mean, if you look at the top 10 drugs that were prescribed in 2013,
what are they?
11 and 12 were for diabetes, and it was a drug called Lantus. It's a long-acting insulin for diabetes.
Right.
The two of them were for asthma, for short-acting, and asthma can also be treated with diet and different things like that. If you go to the doctor, it's incurable. If you go to, I know people that have cured themselves from asthma by changing their diet and finding, it's an inflammation, and they find what foods they're sensitive to and things like that, or maybe some toxins and cleansing.
Right.
But there was a cholesterol medication, a blood pressure medication, and acid reflux, and the ones that are in the top 10, they're brand medications, and they're more popular because they're new, so the drug companies are out promoting to the doctors, the reps from the drug companies. So even though there's some that are cheaper, these are the ones that are the most prescribed because people always want the new ones. That's the most exciting and newest on the market. But a lot of these could be changed easily. Like if you have acid reflux, if you change your diet and learn different things, it's easy to get rid of acid reflux. Yet insurance is paying for pills for, $150, $200 a month as one of the top 10 drugs. It's insane spending of money.
And so it's much simpler if someone's got acid reflux to do what instead holistically? What would be the solution?
The diet is huge with that. You get the acid reflux because we're eating processed foods and meats and things like that. I mean, in most cases, there may be some where people have a certain problem, but the diet is almost everything with that. So if you're eating foods, your body creates the acid to try and break it down, and the more processed it is, and the meats and things like that, the more acid your body has to make. So when you have too much, you start to get that overflow into the esophagus. And when that happens is when you get the symptoms. So there's a book called The Master Cleanse, which is really interesting, and it's they claim that they heal the ulcer with it, but it's a mixture of lemons and maple syrup and cayenne pepper to treat an ulcer and things like that. And when you think of taking a lemon, it's acidic, so you're thinking, well, how's that going to help? But your body always tries to maintain balance. So when you actually have a lemon, your body responds by becoming more alkaline. Right. And with that reduces the acid in the stomach. Your body doesn't need to make more acid for that because it is. So it's kind of a balancing act. But it's one of those things that could be, there's a certain diet, and of course it gets to the raw food and the greens and the vegetables and things like that to change it. But there's certain foods that create a lot more acid in the stomach. There's actually a list in my book. It's that has that as well.
If you've just joined us, I'm with the author of Off Balance. Her name is Dr. Leyla Ali. She's a pharmacist, and this book is about the American way of health and how drugs are just not really making us healthier. But they are. Are there times when you believe? I mean, when you believe that the drugs are appropriate, and times when you don't believe they're appropriate? Is that fair to say? Yeah,
I think that's fair. I think the chronic diseases is where they're really overprescribed. So anything that people has to be on forever. And when you think about when antibiotics came out, when they discovered penicillin, it did amazing things. It helped people that would die from different diseases and people that had wounds that needed it. But now they're completely overprescribed, abused. There's resistance. So a lot of times drugs are good, and they should be used temporarily and much less.
How does the FDA perpetuate this problem, in your opinion?
The FDA, the things I've read is they're just kind of family with the drug companies. Like if people want a drug to get through, it's just the things I've read on it is just so careless on how they let drugs get through. I mean, there's no care. It's just all about making money and getting that hype out to get it passed. So, and the studies, they have to do studies. The drug companies do the studies. But if they have bad studies, then they just don't present them. So, the FDA actually, if you look at the FDA, they let a lot of dangerous things go through that get, recalled later. And they're also suppressed. Like if you talk about the cancer, the FDA has been suppressing legitimate cancer treatments, holistic, for years. And there's a lot of history on that and a lot of information. But people actually go to Tijuana now from all over the world for their alternative and holistic cancer treatments. And that's one of the big, there's stories of how people wanted to do holistic and the FDA wouldn't let them. So I don't think the FDA is our friend anymore. It's supposed to be a regulatory agency, but it's really another, works for the drug companies and gets them through.
Yeah, we've just got a couple of minutes before the break, so we're here on Justice for All with Dr. Leyla Ali. My read on a lot of this pharmaceutical, because big pharma is just in many respects, they put out these drugs that certainly do save lives, but at the same time at a really high cost. And they say that it's because we need to have extra money to do the research and so on. But the way the FDA works with them, it seems like if something is approved for one type of use by the FDA, a doctor might find that it works for something else. And it might be a cheap drug, and the FDA won't approve it for that other use, even though the doctors think it works. And then when it finally does get FDA approval, all of a sudden the price of the drug goes up from $10 a pill to $1,000 a pill. And yet it was the same drug. These are some examples that I've read about that it's kind of a racket, it seems to me, that it's all to make more money for the drug companies. It is a problem. And I think that part of your book about the pharmacy companies and the FDA and the way they work together on it. Don't we have a lot of lobbyists that are working to lobby the FDA for approval of a drug? And I'm sure there's a lot of revolving doors going on there between the industry and the government and these approvals.
Yeah, and the testing too. I think I put one quote in there, or there was something where they said if you do a drug study, you can really have it show whatever results you want. So, the drug companies are doing the studies for their own drugs. They're friends with the FDA. They're all family and friends. And then once the drug gets approved, they make tons of money. There's just lots of money circulating around.
Yep.
And then they start the hype.
Yep.
And
we're going to take a short break here. This is Justice for All, and we have another 30 minutes to go with our guest today, Dr. Leyla Ali. She's a pharmacist. Has written a book called Off Balance. After these short messages, we will be right back with another 30 minutes of Justice for All. We'll be right back.
The place people look to for their holiday light needs is Inter-Ray Outdoor Lights. Let the professionals at Inter-Ray decorate the exterior of your home and business without you lifting a hand. Get $100 off a $1,000 purchase. Call 355-5276 and log on to interray.com. Light up your home or business this holiday season with Inter-Ray. Call 355-5276 today. Discover what the locals already know. The place for the finest donuts and ice cream in Virginia Beach is Crazy Good Donuts and Ice Cream. Strawberry, chocolate, and lemon are just some of the icings you can choose from for your donut. Milkshakes, cones, sundaes, you get the picture. Yum! Buy 12 dozen donuts, get the 13th dozen free as part of the Baker's Dozen Club. Get a breakfast sandwich, the best donuts, the finest ice cream in half the roads, and leave with a smile on your face. Coffee and tea is best with a tasty bacon maple donut. Now through January 4th, buy a $25 gift card and receive a half dozen donuts coupon for free. Valid January 5th through March 31st. Crazy Good Donuts and Ice Cream is open starting at 6 a.m. all day at 2201 Upton Drive in Virginia Beach and Red Mill Walk. Like Crazy Good Donuts and Ice Cream on Facebook, and for more, log on to crazygooddonuts.com.
Hi, I'm Dick Olenich, owner of Spectrum Printing, home of the happy printers. Let's cut to the chase. If you're making copies at FedEx Kinko's, you're paying way too much. Visit thehappyprinters.com and see for yourself. Psst. I went undercover recently and got an estimate from FedEx Kinko's. It was for 500 full-color brochures on nice paper, quick turnaround. That price from FedEx Kinko's is $1,080. Really? That's expensive. At thehappyprinters.com, it's only $285. $1,080 or $285. That's almost an $800 difference. Wow, serious cash. What would you rather have, FedEx expensive or thehappyprinters.com? An $800 savings or nothing? Visit thehappyprinters.com.
Leaky faucet, refinishing old countertops? Hey, Gary Sullivan here. Perhaps you're restaining a deck or painting your living room. Whatever it is, let me help. I'm here to give you the tips you need to finish those pesky projects you've been putting off. If you're restaining, I have a tip for that. Can't get the paint off the hardwood floors? Got a tip for that too. I'm here to make sure that $5 repair doesn't turn into a $500 repair. Join me right here every weekend.
Saturdays at noon, Sundays at 9 a.m. on K-Talk 1650.
We're back. I'm George Yates. This is Justice for All. We're back for another 30 minutes with Dr. Ali. She's a pharmacist that wrote this book, Off Balance, The American Way of Health. What do you say, Dr. Ali, to people that call these alternative sources of healing, quackery?
You get that a lot. And, even pharmacists that are out of school, they have, one of them had a rotation at a holistic pharmacy, and I'm like, oh, how'd you like it? And she said, well, pharmacists don't really believe in holistic. And I'm like, well, holistic isn't a religion. You don't have to believe about it. It's just there's a lot of information, right? You don't have to, believe it on blind faith. You just have to learn about it. And when you're in pharmacy school, you're trained that, it's not FDA approved. Like we learned that to say it like parrots, like that was the most important thing, whether something's FDA approved or not. And they kind of subtly discredit it, and they say, oh, holistic hasn't been approved by the FDA. So it's always kind of, and I also, on the websites too, on the American Diabetes Association website and the American Cancer Society, they'll say that holistic remedies can interfere with the real medicine. Not in exactly those words, but it's sort of the attitude that they have towards it. So please talk to your doctor before trying anything. So, yeah, it's very subtly discredited. They don't believe in it. And, there's a long, the pharmaceutical companies have done a great job of making people think it's quackery. So, that's why I did the book. So if they can actually see what I see, then maybe they'll open their minds to it.
Well, what do you say to this argument that, well, okay, fine, the pharmacy companies have stumbled here and there. They'll release a drug that they think works, let's say Vioxx for arthritis, Celebrex 2, and Fen-Phen for diet. And but you can't let just a few bad apples necessarily say that the whole barrel is rotten. That chemotherapy and radiation have certainly saved thousands, maybe more, millions perhaps, lives of cancer patients. You can't just say, right, that holistic therapy is going to cure somebody of cancer, can you? The holistic people actually, and that's a huge world to get into, but there's the Cancer Control Society that has been helping people holistically for years. Now, if you go to the doctor, the only thing legally that they can tell you is chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. So, they've been suppressing it. But, yeah, the holistic people, in my book, the lady, she cured herself holistically of cancer. How?
I've met tons of people.
How do you cure yourself of cancer holistically? I mean, I've got a brother that's very ill with cancer right now. What do I say to him that's going to help him cure himself?
Okay, well, the cancer is like if you're in the Western medicine approach, they act like it's an invader and it has to be killed off. But it's really being off balance at an extreme level where he does need to address the body, mind, and spirit, emotions, thoughts, all those things. So there's places to go called the Optimum Health Institute in San Diego, and there's also one in Texas. And there you learn about how to treat the disease. And they do wheatgrass, actually. I mean, people can get rid of tumors with wheatgrass. But they also teach you you have to let go of emotions. I mean, if you have people that you're still angry at after 20 years, then that can also cause disease. The thoughts, if you think about the thoughts and how you think about a disease and whether it'll be there or not or what you expect from it, that's important too. So, and the doctors are always telling people what to expect with cancer. But when I was at the Optimum Health, I saw a guy, he had stage 4 cancer. It was prostate spread to his bones. And he did the wheatgrass and the food and the cleansing. And the cleansing also, you eat the raw food, you do colonics, you just get rid of all the junk in the body, plus you learn the emotions. And by the end of the week, he was a different person. He had light back in his eyes, and he was eating 2 plates. And there's people there that you can meet all over the place. Cancer Control Society.
Where is this place?
This is Optimum Health Institute, and you can go there for a week or more. They have a 3-week program, actually, but you could do it a week at a time. But that's a great starting point for someone that has cancer and wants to learn about the different treatments.
Now, is wheatgrass approved by the FDA?
I would say no. It's not. I don't think so.
And what does it do? What is wheatgrass? What is its therapeutic benefit?
It is just like a vacuum. It cleans out toxins. It gets rid of everything. And they also teach you there, because they have a wheatgrass room 24/7, and they use the pulp, actually, to put it on tumors, and they'll actually pull it out like a drawing salve kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I've seen people there do really well with cancer, and it's a whole diet, way of thinking. Everything. I
read the biography of Stephen Jobs, who died of cancer, as I'm sure you know, and I remember when the book details how he, when he first got cancer, he chose to go through a natural type of therapy as opposed to the chemotherapy and so on, and then months later, it wasn't working, and by that time, they say it was too late, and then he ultimately died. He tried to go the conventional route, and he died. So, what do you say to that? Do you say that someone that has cancer should just immediately reject chemotherapy and radiation and surgery, or one of those three, or a combination?
Well, everybody has to make their own decision on that and how far they want to go. Mm-hmm. So I would never tell people like that, because they have to kind of look into it and decide that there's something they can do. So, did he write that book, or did somebody else?
No, it was a biography. It was after his death.
Yeah, it could be very biased as well, because that's what they tell you with the cancer treatments, that it interferes, or it delays for you to get the real treatment. But
right.
The lady in my book, her friend had all the treatment. She had the chemotherapy, radiation. Now you have stars doing double mastectomies just in case. Who's going to think that there's something wrong with that now, right? That's becoming more trendy. But
oh, you mean Angelina Jolie?
Angelina Jolie, and I think Marie Osmond, and different people like that. So,
well, but they went and got a genome test or something, right? That said that they were 90% certain to get cancer or something like that, or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but so.
I got to admit that was pretty severe to do something like that, but.
Right, and to set an example like that for the world is very disappointing to see.
So these common drugs that are prescribed, like the acid reflux drugs, you think that most people could dispense with those with a change of diet? The cholesterol drugs, obviously you change your diet on that and exercise and so on. The asthma drugs, right. You think you could change with a diet. Diabetes, I guess you're talking type 2 diabetes, which is brought on probably by years of bad diet in the first place, right?
Yes, and there's documentaries on there. There's one called simply raw, and you can see the 6 people in there that didn't think that they'd ever get off their meds, and in a week after eating raw food, their blood sugars becoming normal again. So
what does the raw food do that cooked food? Why is raw food
it's
better? Not
just raw food, just the processed foods. I mean, if you think of what our bodies have been used to for thousands of years, and, for thousands of years it's just been what has come off the earth, right, or some different version. Now we have food that's completely barely food anymore, right? I mean, it's processed, it's injected with this or that, and they have antibiotics and flavoring and different things like that. So, your body doesn't recognize it. And when you have the diabetes, you have too much sugar in your bloodstream, and the sugar is supposed to go into the cells and become energy. But when it gets overwhelmed, when you have too much of that, then you have the symptoms of diabetes. You have too much of the fluid shifts from the cells to the bloodstream just so it can keep flowing. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to flow if you have too much particles in there, right? And then you have the thirst. And so it's by changing to raw food, it makes it so you don't have too much sugar. The body can recognize it, and the food goes where it's supposed to go. So, when you think of all this processed food and our body's trying to handle it, I mean, it's no wonder everybody has these strange diseases and Alzheimer's and cancer and things like that. But if you have someone that just eats raw food that came from the earth or natural food, even if it's cooked, I mean, I'm just saying, going back to basics, when you go back to the basics, then your body can handle it, and people can live for a long, long time without all the diseases.
But, aren't people living, I'm sorry, I'm sounding like a devil's advocate here, but I'm just trying to create a little conversation here. Aren't people living much, much longer lives than they ever did before? I mean, how can we say that that's not as a result of some of these wonder drugs?
Well, I don't know if the people that are living a long, long time are on a pile of drugs. And I heard now this generation of kids growing up, and look at the obesity. I mean, this is going to be the first time where the lifespan is going to start getting shorter because of the diet and all the drugs and everything else. I mean, you got people being diabetic in their early 20s now and 30s, and it used to be a disease of 50 and 60. You have people now that are getting cancer when they're 20. When we were a kid, there's nobody in our school that had cancer. I didn't know anybody. Now everybody knows somebody that has cancer. So I know George Burns lived a long, long time, but maybe people like the China study had a lot of studies of different groups in China, and they found the ones that had the less disease were the ones that ate the simple foods of their area, the natural foods wherever they lived. And once you start getting the McDonald's and things like that,
so you are. I'm sure you're a big proponent then of organic food and also avoiding GMOs.
Yeah, and it's certainly not very easy now to do that all the time. It's it takes a huge effort.
I mean, I can't even get into the parking lot of my Whole Foods market here in Virginia Beach.
Good.
I can't believe it. I go in there and it's like a swap meet, people getting food. So it's a lot of people have gotten the message that the organic food is what they should be eating, and of course that's part of that market there. You're not going to get anything there that's either not organic or GMOs or genetically modified. So
right. Well,
so what you mentioned colonics. What does that word colonics mean? You talk about body cleansing and just purging your body of toxins. What does somebody do that's trying to just purge their body of these toxins and then eat this raw food and all to get themselves, I guess, pure and clean, I guess, is what you're talking about, body cleansing. What is that all about, and how does one go about doing it?
Well, if you went to the Optimum Health, you'd have a raw food diet for a week, or however long you stay. And then the colonics, if you think of an enema, these colonics are going up the other end, and they fill you up with water, and then wow. It lasts. You're there for an hour. So they fill it up, release, fill it up, and release. And when you are there for the first time, you'll see a lot of stuff that wasn't last night's meal. I mean, it's amazing, all this stuff. And some of the theories, of the naturopaths is a lot of the diseases start in our colon. And it makes sense. How can the colon keep processing and getting rid of all these food that the body can't recognize anymore because we're so far away from nature, from the natural food. So they do that, and then at the Optimum they also put wheatgrass in there too, but it pulls out a lot of stuff, and people are pretty amazed at what comes out. So.
Well, if someone can't, take off a week and go to San Diego, how do they do this? How do you cleanse yourself at home? I guess you can. Don't you have to do that for like the colonoscopies? You got to clear your whole body out. You take that medication and you just flushes you completely out.
Yeah, it flushes you out. And if you could find a colon hydrotherapist in the area, which I'm sure there should be in a lot of areas, then that's good. Wheatgrass is easy to grow. I mean, it tastes terrible, but Whole Foods will have wheatgrass. So you can, in the program they want you to take 2 ounces twice a day.
What does it do?
And
wheatgrass. What's it got in it that makes it healthy?
It's like a vacuum. It pulls out toxins. It removes. It's like it's just like I don't know if I want to say a miracle drug, but it does. I mean, people, like I said, the pulp. They take the pulp and they put it on. You tape it on like a wound care product, and it'll remove the tumor. So it's very cleansing. It's one of those things that helps with the cancer and cleansing. And I actually met a guy there. He said he had skin cancer all over his body and went there 20 years ago. It's also, I guess they call it a blood purifier.
If you've just joined us, we're here with Dr. Leyla Ali. She's a doctor of pharmacy. She's written this book, Off Balance. Your book also gets a lot into the power of positive thinking, and you talk about the power of the mind and positive thinking. You mentioned there in your book, and it's well known that when we do a lot of these studies, sometimes the placebo effect is as powerful as the actual drug. So it's clear that when someone has believes that a drug is going to work, sometimes that's what makes it work, whether it's really a drug or not. A sugar pill can work as well as the real drug in many cases, right?
Right.
So, and you talk about the power of the mind. Let's go a little bit into that. What is it about the power of the mind, the power of positive thinking that's going to help somebody cure themselves?
Well, if you go to a doctor and he says you have 3 months to live, and then you sort of believe it, and then you go somewhere else and they say, oh, no, you don't, you can do all this. I mean, it's like a shift in your beliefs. And once that happens, your cells actually change, when you realize that there's possibilities. So they say your thoughts create your reality, and then the thoughts that the doctors tell you is don't do this without, talking to your doctor. Make sure you take your medications or you'll have problems. But none of them tell you, well, you can heal yourself. Or the lady that healed herself from cancer, she used visualization, and she visualized the cancer dissolving. So people use it. Visualization is huge. Hypnotherapy, Duncan Tooley used it to treat his neuropathy, and he was able to completely...
Now, hypnotherapy, is that when you actually hypnotize yourself, or do you go to a hypnotist? What is hypnotherapy?
Either way. If you can have, like Duncan Tooley, now he changed his life from a computer programmer to a hypnotherapist, so he would teach you how to do it yourself, and you could do sessions with him too. But both is good, and when he was doing it, I think he would hypnotize himself 3 times a day, or do it a lot to just change his body, and it healed something that the doctors could not treat. He healed his neuropathy. The doctor didn't have any solution for him.
What is neuropathy?
Neuropathy is, basically it's nerve damage. So they have it where it's like an autoimmune, and his own body was attacking his nerve cells. So when they did a test, they found that he didn't have any nerve cells. So his below his knees, it would go numb, or else you would have pain. But he would go numb just kind of at random times and end up falling down, and there wasn't anything they could do for it. So it's your nerves and pain and problems with that.
So the power of positive thinking, eating right. These are all things that doctors are going to say to you in addition to prescribing you the drugs, right? I mean, it's not like we have to, not do all of these holistic things while we're at the same time using the drugs that the doctors say are good for us, right?
I mean, okay, well, what drug are you talking about? Because most of the drugs, when I think of drugs, are ones that can be used temporarily until you learn these, say. So most of the drugs you don't need to be on forever as they have you on.
You
so
use
if you learn
use them
to eat
temporarily.
right, if you learn to deal with emotions, if you learn how to think in ways that are empowering and healing, then you wouldn't need most of the drugs.
And so how do you go about doing that, though, overnight if you've got somebody that, I mean, we in general, we try to stay positive, but nobody can stay completely positive 100% of the time. We're human beings, right? And the negative thoughts will creep in, and then you have to overcome them with positive thinking. How does somebody change their mental outlook like that in such a short period of time? What do you recommend?
You know, it's definitely a habit, and it's in all areas of our life. We have these patterns of beliefs, and, you know, the thought patterns create your beliefs. One of the tools I used was, it's called an emotional scale, and it's by Abraham Hicks. They have a book out, and what you do is if you feel sad or you feel depressed, and you know, the thing is with emotions, too, we haven't talked about that yet, but you should let yourself feel the emotion and then let it go. Like, don't try and push it away with a lot of the antidepressants. But once you feel it, then you can actively try and think of a better way to look at the situation, something more empowering. Because, you know, a lot of these diseases, they don't just show up with a symptom. You're off balance for a long time. It takes a long time for symptoms of, say, cancer and a lot of these diseases to appear. So, you know, things are brewing for a while, and all of a sudden you have a condition, you know. So, like I said, they don't pop up overnight. But the thoughts, you can definitely, it's definitely a learning curve, and something it took me a long time to get the handle of. But they say our work is to look at any situation you have in better light, so it feels better, and you use your own feelings as a guidance system. Say, if you have a thought and it turns your stomach, and then you can change and look at the situation a different way, so you feel lighter, so you have that feeling of relief, then that's one of the ways that I learned a lot, and that's the way to deal with emotions. But and a lot of people, they'll help you deal with emotions, too. You let yourself feel it, invite it in, and then you let it go. But a lot of people, nobody has any idea on how to deal with emotions in healthy ways. And I actually was just doing a continuing education, and it was on weight loss. And it said the lady, she actually gained 50 pounds after she had a baby, and she couldn't lose the weight. And she was eating when she was stressed. She was eating when she's hungry, when she was happy, when she was sad. And so she couldn't do anything about it, so the doctor recommended surgery, the bariatric surgery. And it's like, well, okay, you don't have anything to help her with her emotions? I mean, there's a lot of holistic things, actually, that deal with emotions. But the doctor had nothing to suggest. It's like, okay, you can't do it, let's cut you up and have surgery. And that's just like reading a passing continuing education, but that's how things generally work.
Where does somebody go that wants to explore? Is there like a one-stop shopping for these holistic techniques? If you go to a hospital, you can get doctors for everything. If you go to a pharmacy, you can get every drug on the planet. Where do you go for to get all of these alternative ways of medicine so that you can maybe, as opposed to just kind of doing it in this kind of scattershot way?
Well, if things work out for my way, I'll be creating that. So that's my goal, is to have so people say, hey, here's my problem, what holistic alternatives are available. But there's not really an easy answer for that right now.
Yeah.
And
that would be a really good thing for you to do, Leyla. You ought to do that. That way you've got one-stop shopping for to a way to avoid these other things. You know, where there's a WebMD, only it's an alternative WebMD, right?
Right, and exactly, and by disease states. I mean, there's so many things that people don't know about, and I learn about it all the time too. Do
you have a website then that that people can go to get some more information about these other techniques?
Well, right now I have one for my book, and I have it on Facebook. It's offbalancethebook.com, but that is something we have in mind. I'm also working on a series of pamphlets. And the pamphlets are going to be based on disease state, actually. So we're almost actually done with the first one for diabetes. And so in that, it's going to explain diabetes, and it's also going to have the natural and the holistic approaches to it that people need to know about. So that's the work in progress. We're working on diabetes. We're working on the gut. And
when do you suppose that the insurance companies are going to come around and start helping cover some of these other these are really wellness things, aren't they? We've been complaining for years that the insurance companies reward doctors for visits, but we don't reward doctors for keeping patients healthy. And that's what a lot of this is all about. It's wellness, which unfortunately you don't get paid to do that. Yeah, no, nobody gets paid. And you think the insurance company would want to have their hand in that. And I actually have a proposal. I actually right now work for United Healthcare, so I have a proposal for them to have a holistic health program. I'm not sure if they're going to do it yet, but I mean that's certainly what I'd love to see happen. Are you still in the pharmacy business? Do you still practice as a pharmacist, or have you given it up entirely? No, I still practice because I need money, and I work for United Healthcare Mail Order Pharmacy as a consulting pharmacist. Uh-huh. So I'm working in opposite of my book. It's people that want their 90-day supply of medications mailed. I take their questions on the phone for all over the country, but I did put in my holistic proposal. And how do you feel about that when you do you ever counsel people when you do? I get a kick out of it. I go pick up drugs at the pharmacy. They'll always say, they'll ask a question, right, that you fill in the little blank. Do you need any advice from your pharmacist on this drug? Do you, when they ask questions about the drug, do you put in your 2 cents worth about holistic alternatives? No, most people that I talk to aren't interested in it, so I don't. If they are and I have something to offer, then, I will. I'll throw it in. But it's really not the platform right there. Right. There's not really time they're not looking for. So, at that level, I'm just kind of doing my job. Right. When they say something, then, then I'll jump in, sure. I had somebody call the other day, and they said they took this new drug that was like a blood thinner called Brilinta, and they took 4 of it. It's a new one on the market. And after the 4th tablet, they ended up in the hospital from bleeding. Bladder was bleeding, and it's one of those side effects that's kind of popping up now more and more. Wow. Well, it's been fun having you on the show for the last hour, and I hope you got another book coming, and I hope you get that website up and running because I think that you're on the right track here going forward. Thank you. And by the way, our pamphlet website is whattodoabouthealth.com, and that's going to have the pamphlets based on disease state, or the booklets. So that's the other one. Okay, well, that's great. Well, listen, then we'd like to thank Dr. Leyla Ali for being on the show today. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, goodbye. See you later. Bye-bye. Okay. And this is going to wrap up another hour of our show today on Justice for All. This is George Yates. We spent the last couple of hours here with Dr. Leyla Ali, who's a pharmacist. Her book's Off Balance. And before that, we had Marilyn Roach regarding 6 Women of Salem. If you missed the show or you want to catch the show in its entirety, you can go to my website at www.ghylaw.com, and you can get all of our shows. We've been on the air now about 6 months. We've got some fascinating interviews with with some authors. We've had expert lawyers and constitutional law scholars, and now today, a pharmacist and a researcher of witch trials. So we're covering some ground here in Justice for All. It's been a lot of fun. Glad you could listen in. Come back next Saturday from 2 to 4. This is George Yates. You have a great weekend.